Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the Bonner Breakdown. I'm Chris Bassett. I'm here with Ken Lawrence, who is running for mayor of Sandpoint. And just so everybody knows, Ken and I have already had this conversation once. It was a great day yesterday. We had a long conversation. It was really good, and I found out later that. The mics weren't working quite right, so we've made all of our proper adjustments, and we're going to try and have some semblance of a healthy conversation today. But I'm excited to have him in the studio. As you know, Bonner Breakdown is here for three things: conversation, connection, and celebration. And with that, we had Sandpoint Community Resource Center in. We're very grateful to Bonner Community Housing Agency for being a primary sponsor of this, online show. And so we are going to jump right in with Ken now that all the pleasantries are done. Ken, how you doing?
I'm doing fine.
Good. You had a little forum last night at the community hall.
Yes.
I caught the end of it. How was that for you?
It was better than I expected.
Good.
In some ways, I was more relaxed. I'd been in two or three prior to that, and kind of getting the feel for it.
Sure.
And so last night went quite well, I thought, and the reader and the radio station and KRFY and the Sandpoint Online, I think, put it on together,
and the Association of Realtors too, I think.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. I was thinking there was a fourth one.
Yeah, there was.
I guess I can forget their votes.
I have no idea. You're hilarious. Well, Ken, I wanted to, one of the reasons why we're doing this show is so that we can move past all of the, one of the biggest problems I see with our current climate is that we have a lot of editorials and very few conversations. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we almost never get to do is know the person. Mm-hmm. And so I'd love to take a few minutes and just dive into kind of your history. Mm-hmm. Like, who are you? Where are you from? What brought you to Sandpoint? So I know your former profession as a minister because I'm in that ministry position. And so you and I have spent a lot of time together over the years and partnered on a lot of different events and things like that. So everybody knows Ken and I know each other pretty well. At least we think we do, who knows, but we've swam in the same pond for a while. So Ken, tell us a little bit about your background and history and where are you from?
Well, I did have life before Sandpoint.
Whoa.
And I've been in Sandpoint 22 years, my wife Mavis and myself, and some of our kids have moved here since. About 3 out of 4 of our adult kids moved here after we did, and not just because we were here, but that had something to do with it.
All right. They
came into the area. Sure. But we had a number of years in ministry prior to that. We had... I'm from Illinois originally. Okay. My wife is from Maine, and we met at Aurora University in Aurora, Illinois.
Okay, which is just outside of Chicago,
Just outside of Chicago, 25, 35 miles, something like that. Yeah. Just west of Chicago. Mm-hmm. And that's where we met and had exciting times there. We were best friends before we were... not seeing one another as anything else, and that went on for nearly a year. But we had a great start, and so we later we transferred to a ministry school out in Massachusetts.
Okay.
Berkshire Christian College at that time. It's no longer valid now, but it was in a nice school, a beautiful. Sat on a mountain above Tanglewood, which is where the Boston Symphony Orchestra goes for the summer.
That's awesome.
And so, it was a good time, and so we got married after that. Let's see, we were married. We met at college and went that fall to Berkshire. And anyhow, we've been in ministry now for a number of years, and even before coming here. And we had lived in Illinois and Michigan and Wisconsin, not necessarily in that order, and then
They'll kind of blend together after a little while. Yeah.
And we spent several years in Florida in ministry there, and then in Connecticut. And Connecticut was probably the last place before we came here. We were in Connecticut for a number of years, probably 6 or 8 years, something like that. And then we came to Sandpoint in '97. And
why?
That's
why did you come to Sandpoint? I think that's one of the biggest questions. So many people are here, that there's almost a you can call it destiny, you could call it fate, serendipity, however you want to define that. But it seems like a lot of people are drawn here and feel led here. What brought you to Sandpoint?
Well, we had visited Sandpoint in 1975, and a friend who was later county assessor here, Bonner County assessor, Jim Boatwright, who since passed away, but he was here, his wife and family, and we knew them, and so we came through here in '75 and spent, I believe, a few weeks here in the area, and we were speaking in different churches, and I won't go into all of that right now, but we had a great time here. Yeah, we spoke in the local Methodist church, did a weekend retreat there, and we spoke at what now is Kootenai Community Church.
Oh, wow.
And
cool.
In a couple of other places while we were in the area, and like I say, we were here a few weeks. Had a great time. It happened to be in summer, and my oldest son, who's now my campaign manager.
Oh, okay.
But he got his first motorcycle while we were here in Sandpoint in 1975.
Well, no, that's heritage right there. Like you bought your first motorcycle in Sandpoint.
But we didn't plan necessarily to come back. I did visit here a time or two during the years and saw our friends, the Boatwrights, plus some other folks that we had met when we were here, and had a good time in the area. But then just before we moved here in the fall of '97, I was with a mutual friend of ours, Wayne Anderson, now from Boise. He was in Seattle at the time. But we were together out in the Connecticut, and he was having a lot of good ministry out there in churches that I was affiliated with and associated with. And we had a good relationship between he and I. And my wife and I were planning to come out to the Northwest in the fall. And in telling him about that over lunch, we mentioned how we had been in Sandpoint, and he had some connections in the past in Sandpoint, and felt sort of, like you say, a draw or some interest beyond normal.
Yeah, he felt a pull.
And so he said, you keep referring back to Sandpoint, and you said you're heading northwest and you're going to be in Seattle and everything, but he said, I think something's going on with you in Sandpoint. He says, I think you ought to come out and check it out. And I said, well, we're coming this fall, about 3 months, we'll be coming out that way. And he says, you ought to think about coming out and looking the area over. So my wife and I talked it over and got on an airplane and came to Seattle, rented a car, traveled around the Northwest a little bit, up into Canada, and we were with a friend up there who was a minister and holding meetings up there. We went up there and spent some time with him. And so then came back down to Sandpoint, and we were here over the 4th of July weekend that year. And amazing things happened. We were at a beautiful 4th of July celebration down at Bayview at a picnic we'd been invited to. And there was a man there who was connected with the Assembly of God Church here in Sandpoint. Yeah. And he said, we're trying to sell our church because we're building a new one. And so I said, "Oh, that's interesting. I might be interested in checking into that and seeing what's going on." And so I came back to town. We were staying in Sandpoint, and I came back in town, looked at the Assembly of God Church at that time on the corner of Church and Boyer, and so, boy, that'd be
Wow.
just great, So
Yeah, just a good fit.
The rest is history.
The rest is history. So you moved here, you bought that. Over the years, I know that you've ran some rentals and you've kind of established yourself here with a business.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your kind of business background, because you were been in business for a long time here in Sandpoint.
Well, yes, we ended up, we didn't come to town with the idea of painting. I had some painting experience on the side from time to time, but after we got in town, I told, of course, the Boatwrights knew we had actually painted their house when we visited them one time here, and they told their good friend the Moody's, who Dr. Moody is veterinarian here, and famous kids and so forth, and so we kind of got acquainted with them, and they said, "Oh, he paints, and they go, 'Oh, we need our house painted,' and so I thought, well, we could do that, and that was the end of my relative freedom, and so we've been painting. We painted here for 20 years, ran Lawrence painting business, and met a lot of wonderful people in that, as well as in the ministry of the church and so forth. So it was,
What was your favorite part about running a business in Sandpoint, in this area?
I think the people and the natural beauty combined.
Yeah.
We painted for the people, and we enjoyed their views. We did a lot of high-end properties and lakefront and riverfront and so on, so mountain tops. And so we enjoyed, I always enjoyed stopping for lunch and just looking at Sandpoint, and down on the city,
great.
And out on the water. And if it was nice and warm in the summer, sometimes we would jump in the lake at lunchtime and take a quick swim.
Oh, that's great.
Go back to work.
That's great.
So that was a lot of fun. But we had developed over a period of years a good business, had a few people working for us. And I told last night in the forum about the mayorship, I was talking about that just very briefly, about the painting background. And I said, Steve Geiger was on the front row at that time, and he had been speaking for Ponderay Mayor earlier, and I said, we like to keep this mayor stuff in the paint family, and he grinned real big,
Yeah, and for people that don't know, Steve Geiger owns Sandpoint Building Supply.
He's In and Out Painting.
In and Out Painting.
Yeah, and I don't know about the building.
Oh, okay. So I had got those mixed up. My bad. So
I don't know. I just know him as running In and Out Painting.
Okay.
And he's actually the biggest, I believe, the biggest painting company in the immediate area.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
And,
that's great.
So I would run into him in paint shops and stuff.
Cool.
Often.
Great.
And so got to know him a little bit.
Yeah, I've met him a few times. Had great conversations with him.
Yeah.
So when it comes to running a business in Sandpoint, comes to running a business in this area, was there anything that you felt like was really difficult for you, or anything that other than just normal business?
It was above normal. It was wonderful. The business was good, and I believe God provided for our family and myself in wonderful ways. Even during the years of recession, we were provided with work with the GSA, General Services Administration. So we painted the local federal building while it was federal here. We painted a lot during the recession. We painted a lot in Lewiston and down in Moscow, and we did 3 border stations, the 2 in Idaho and over in Medellin Falls in
Oh,
Washington.
that's great.
And we would drive out to all these places. And my son and the other workers would say, "Why are we going so far to paint?" And I said, "There's a recession going on."
Yeah, hello.
And but we never really we didn't slow
impact
down
you.
much.
Yeah,
it
that's
was
great.
It was wonderful. But the people in Sandpoint have been great to work for, and wonderful folks, and business was good. The people were wonderful, beautiful places to work. And it's been a great time all during those years. We stopped the business about 2 years ago.
Well, and I remember having a cup of coffee with you several years ago, and you had talked about might be thinking about maybe transitioning someday, and you're kind of in that process, and we had a long conversation about that. I think we were with Ross, and then we got word that you had found a successor to the ministry at River of Life Church. So tell us about the transition.
Well, our grandson Justin Gardner he's 26 years old now and has been really at our church for over 20 years.
Wow.
Since a little tyke. And so he's had a heart for God and a desire to serve, and he's currently works at Quest and has a good job there, which he will continue for the time being. And he's kind of been handpicked and hand raised, although we didn't know that, during those 20 years. But I had asked advice from Wayne Anderson, Kevin Ford, different brothers that I lean on a little bit, and as far as what would be the best way to transition from my leadership of 22 years at the church. And so this past spring, in April, we had a guest speaker in from the Seattle area, and Steve came in, and
Steve Myring,
and he told me that on the way here, he just had he saw me as transitioning, and he didn't explain it like that at first, but he said he saw the changing of the guard in Buckingham Palace, and he felt like it applied here. I knew he did as soon as he said it. He just, felt like it was time. And so I didn't react to that. I said, well, I've been wondering, what would be good. And so he just told the people then at the end of that service, he said, I on the way here, I just felt like I was seeing the changing of the guard in Buckingham Palace.
Wow.
And I think that may be happening here. And so just things took off from there, and we talked to Justin and his wife Troy, and so make sure she was raised 8 years, I think 8 or 10 years of her life, from most of her teenage years. She was in Kenya and working with her parents there, and they run a care home for children. Is not exactly an orphanage.
Right.
It's more like they adopt them.
Wow.
But they have about 42, I think, now, or something like that. And a lot of them are challenged children that were literally thrown away, dropped off at the hospital or whatever. And as the family began to get a reputation for caring for these kids, then the hospitals would call them and say, "Could you take another one?" And so she was raised
on the mission field, essentially.
From 10 years old to 18, I think she was over there, and then came back here, was our neighbor. I met her, and I was impressed, but I took her to a meeting at our church that night, and Justin was even more impressed. and they both were wearing Batman T-shirts that night when they met, and the rest was
dangerous territory right there. Yeah, that's funny. That's great. Well, that's good. And so Justin's doing that, and you've stepped out of that role completely at this point.
Yes,
right?
About 5 weeks ago.
Oh wow! Congratulations. That's good. You go from being in ministry, owning a business, doing all this stuff, and then on the last possible day, you show up at the clerk's office to sign up to run
for mayor. Yep.
for mayor on the last day.
That's right.
Okay, so you got to tell us what's going on.
Why?
What's happening? What made you do that?
So I've been a part of the city for 22 years. I've been observing things, and the last 2 or 3 terms, when each time we've had an election for mayor, I have somewhat seriously considered running for mayor, and then I was busy with these things we've mentioned, and so I didn't. But from my perspective, it seemed that Sandpoint leadership was taking us on a small scale, more in the areas of a city like Seattle or Portland or San Francisco, politically. The political philosophy seemed to be moving more, a little more toward the left, and so forth.
Sure.
And I haven't mentioned it today. I mentioned it yesterday, but I'm a Republican in philosophy and in political thinking, and I have long admired Ronald Reagan and and so forth. But I just felt that we needed to offer the people an opportunity to make a choice between continuing to move strongly, maybe, or quickly in those directions, and moving in a more conservative direction without being weird or radical, which is what most Republicans are identified as now. In some
there's
sections.
some other words that are used, right, for Republicans, right?
Yep. So I have a heart for America. I love the country, and I love the state of Idaho and Sandpoint, and so I decided now's the time. So we went in. My friends and I went in the last day that you could sign up to run, and we did that at 3:00 in the afternoon, and at that time no one else had signed up to run for mayor. And
okay,
I thought that was interesting.
Wow.
And I said, well, isn't Mayor Shelby going to run again? And I go, we don't know. We haven't heard a thing. So 2 hours, close to 2 hours later, the deadline was like 5:00. I guess he slipped in and signed up. I don't know the details.
Well, it sounds like a few people did, right?
Yeah, and Shannon Williamson did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I saw that, and I said, well, that's interesting. I signed up first, so I didn't pick this group.
Well, you don't finish where you start always with elections, right?
No,
just because you signed up first doesn't mean
no, because I signed up first. But it's been really an amazing time in the last 5 weeks running. I've gotten to know people better than because I'm looking at everybody now, and
sure.
Everybody is a possible voter. Although I have an awful lot of friends who live in Sago and Ponderay and Kootenai and Dover and Sandpoint, where they can't vote outside the limits.
They're in the postal code, but they're not in the city limits. Yeah, we know how that works.
And I
was talking to a friend who was just like, I'm so frustrated because they live with a Sandpoint. They moved here recently, and they're like, oh, we don't get to vote for the city. No, you do not. Yeah,
that's right. They didn't get to vote, and I would say 8 or 9 out of 10 people that I talked to in the first week or two said, I would vote for you, but I live. Yeah. And then different people would tell me, we're happy you're running because we feel the city isn't on track with the rest of the county or even North Idaho. It's kind of doing its own thing a little bit and so on. So we were already in the race then, and so it's been a great experience. I mean, win
Okay.
or lose, I'm thrilled with what has happened, and I feel that we may have influenced in ways that we can't yet see
Okay.
what the outcome would be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's been very good.
So, what do you see as being some of your top priorities when you think about being mayor? You're becoming mayor. What are, and honestly, anybody that's watching this has probably read through the newspaper, the Reader,
Yeah.
I mean, how many
Yeah.
different places
Yeah.
you answer the questionnaires, and it's bing,
Yeah.
bing, 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 bing.
Yeah.
I printed off a dozen,
Yeah.
practically. Okay, there were 6,
Mm-hmm.
but a half dozen. But there's the basic questions. What's your vision for Sandpoint?
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
And we can dive into that. But I'm really curious what are your priorities if you become mayor?
I think in a word, maybe the first word would be the people, loving the people. But the infrastructure of the city
Okay.
is kind of a basic that I believe we have left in second place with the enthusiasm of so many new people moving here, coming here as tourists, and all that. The growth,
Sure.
we've been overwhelmed with goodness and opportunities and so on, but we in designing and developing and planning for all kinds of wonderful recreation activities and art art opportunities and so forth. I feel that some of the basics have been almost not forgotten because they're talked about by everybody all the time.
Correct, yeah.
Even those on the city council or in the
Sure.
city offices. I mean, they're saying, "What are we going to do about these issues?"
Right. Yep.
But the infrastructure, streets, and sewer systems and the downtown business interruptions over the last 3 or 4 years, things have almost made the locals, I think, feel secondary, and they're
Okay.
not. And I know nobody means for them to be that way, but I think we need to focus more on sewers and streets and housing. Everybody wants more and better and
Well, and
economical housing.
Yeah. Well, why don't we jump over there and talk
Yeah.
a little bit about housing?
Yeah.
We didn't do a whole lot in our last conversation about that.
Yeah.
Which no one will ever see. Sorry. But when you look at this concept of affordable housing, what are some things that come to mind for you when you look at, is it an issue that we need to worry about right now? And I know there's a lot of, obviously, I work in the housing industry. I'm an advocate for local
Right,
housing.
right.
And so when you look at the issue of housing, what do you see as being the biggest problem?
Well, the beauty of the area for the tourists, for the people that have already lived here, and for people who just retire and move here.
Yeah.
I mean, everything is so beautiful and wonderful that everybody's that can says, "I'd like to live here," and so they come, and they come whether they have the means financially or even if they don't.
Right.
And they think, well, I'll get a job. I want to live there. And 20 years ago, when we first were here, that was, fairly normal, easy thing to do. And they'd come in. And through the years, it began to get, of course, we had our ups and downs with real estate.
Of course,
and that kind of thing, like anywhere. But,
Yep.
the housing that we had began to fill up. And I think Sandpoint probably made some poor decisions decades back when they allowed themselves to become locked in. I think they had choices many years ago where they could have had
Sure.
more land that would be part of Sandpoint. And now a lot of it is Pend Oreille and Sagal in particular, and Sagal out of necessity. It's just, it was just more or less open land, and it's gone
Right.
heavy housing and so forth. And then in Pend Oreille, there's a lot of housing and so forth being
Yep.
designed and
Yep.
built. And any place there's land. But in Sandpoint, it's pretty amazing over the last 20 years. to see how, for the whole 20 years, I've thought there wasn't much more room in Sandpoint for building. But when you think what they built, they keep, and now we're sliding little bitty houses in between a couple of houses, and we mentioned yesterday the 10 units that are being built out by Division, North Division, and so on, and looks like they'll do a fine job, but it looks to me like the larger of the two sizes, I think there's two sizes there in those 10 houses, but the larger one seems to be about 750 square feet.
Yeah.
And then there'd be...
I think the larger one's a little bit bigger, I think, in general.
I just stepped it off. I mentioned that yesterday.
Yeah. But
anything I say wrong today, I'll tell you I said it right yesterday.
Okay, that's good. That's good. So it sounds like availability, as far as the city of Sandpoint and housing goes, you're seeing availability of land being an issue because now, in order to get housing prices in a place where local, I use the word local housing, not necessarily affordable housing, because affordable is always relative.
I like that. I should have used that last night.
Well, affordable is always relative.
Yeah.
And what's affordable for a millionaire is not affordable for somebody who, a husband and a wife who both work at Walmart, or a husband who is just getting started at Quest, and the wife's in the CNA program.
Yeah.
It's like there's these local people who want to be here, who maybe grew up here, who live here, who love it here, but they don't have opportunity to at least buy into the American dream, which is home ownership.
That's right.
That's the number one issue of the American dream, is you can have your property and you can build something and you can, add on to your house and build a shop and do some things. Everybody's dream up here is 5 acres and a shop.
Right.
That's, I remember when I was doing mortgages, people would come in and I'm like, you can't afford an acre, much less 5 acres and a shop.
Yeah.
But they're going to hold out for it. I'm like, it's only going to get more expensive. So, we're dealing with markets, we're dealing with this kind of stuff. And when we talk about local housing, it seems like density is an issue, right? Because if you've got limited land, you'd have to squeeze them in. And I think that there's generally pushback to that in the city of Sandpoint because of its character, right? We want to keep its natural character and we don't want them all squished in together. So there's a lot of challenges when it comes to looking in the future and how do we develop this? How do we look at this? What are some things that you would look at as a mayor of the city to maybe implement or try to change in a process of looking at affordable housing and looking at getting local housing going? What are some things that you might do to try and kickstart a process or look at things on a deeper level?
Well, of course, one thing I'm interested in what's going to happen to the 60 or 70 acres that we sold, 77 acres out there on Boyer.
The 77 acres
77.
For the U of I property?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I was thinking that, that would seem, it looks like it's going to go into some sort of a development or whatever. And so, I would hope that there would be maybe some nice homes, and well, they'd all be nice, but some that would be
some that would
something
be
young
people.
family starters could get into, and so on, and that'll be. It sounds like a lot in town, 77 acres. It sounds like a lot of area, but the way you try to lay things out beautifully in the streets and curbs and gutters and everything.
Well, and there was a big demand for open space on that property as well, for the watershed area around Sand Creek, as well as open use for a lot of different, outdoor activists were really going after that property, and which is great. I don't there's nothing wrong with that. But I think you'd want to have some input or some help with some of the planning on some of that, and work with the developer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you think about things like the politics, because you just deep dived into political sphere, right? You went from minister and business owner to politician. What's been the biggest thing that you've noticed in that transition or change?
I hadn't thought about that specifically. I have had interest in the political situation because of my desire to see free enterprise in America generally.
Okay.
I've been very supportive of candidates through the recent years. I mean, all along, but especially in the last 10, 20 years or whatever.
Right.
I've been very concerned about having candidates available who believed in free enterprise, America, and so forth. So I've worked for both local. I've worked for Bonner County candidates. I've worked for, and by working, I'm saying as an individual,
Like
just
you've
reaching
advocated
out.
for them?
Yeah.
Okay.
And state representatives and I was involved a little bit with Russ Fulcher getting
Okay.
elected and representing us in Washington. And so I've been a concerned citizen, and now I'm stepping forward into a more active role of that and that. So yeah, it is a transition, but I think if I win the election Tuesday, then this fun little period of running for office is behind me, and I'm facing serious undertaking. And
That's right,
And
yeah.
I feel
Yeah.
that the remaining 2 months of this year would be spent in getting acclimated and
Absolutely,
prepared,
yeah, sure.
to
Yeah.
lead this wonderful city. And so, it is transition, but I'm living it so heavily right now that I'm hardly feel it emotionally.
Yeah.
I have peace. I think we mentioned yesterday that anytime I have sought what I believed God wanted me to do with my life, I've always expected that He would give me peace in the direction that He was leading. And if I started in a direction that wasn't His desire for me, that I would then feel sort of like I was off center, off base.
Sure.
And even though the final entry into politics, running for mayor, happened somewhat quickly, my preparation, I had prepared, even wanted to run for mayor, as I mentioned, years ago, but been kind of preparing and observing and meeting leaders and people in the area. And so all of that has been part of the preparation. But then, like say, after next Tuesday, if I win, then I've got to really get into it the next 2 months and begin and really get serious. And I think we were talking about whether or not to have a victory party Tuesday or what. Well, I don't even know when they'll know for sure.
Yeah, usually the night of, I think.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
usually they
how
publish, as far as I know, usually I find out on Wednesday what's going on. So Tuesday
On
night.
Wednesday.
Well, I know they publish it.
Yeah,
so.
they publish it Wednesday.
Yeah.
That's when I usually
Yeah.
hear about things in the county and I assume the city.
Well, I'm sure that you would have the ability to keep track of how you're doing. So with that, you talked a little bit about some of the things that you're doing right now in this transition. So what are you doing right now? You're running for mayor. What are you doing to prepare for that? And how's that been going?
Well, it's good. I've been busier than I've been in a long time because I've been attending a lot of the functions that I could. Someone was giving me advice, said, don't just plan events, but be at different events. And I've kind of accented that way.
Right, that's good.
And so I've been in a lot of interesting places to meet people and learn from people. And of course, I've begun to attend the city council meetings regularly. Several years ago, the pastors took turns in opening up the city council meetings, and then I think we dropped the ball. I don't blame anybody at city or city council, but we kind of dropped the ball at that time. So so I've in the past I've been at Sandpoint City Councils quite a bit, but then recently not so much, and so now I have gone back and started reading the minutes, and I've started in July 1st. So I've read everything the City Council has done in their meetings, special meetings as well as the regular week meetings. So I've covered everything from the 1st of July, but that's still pretty recent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so if I survive the campaign, then I begin to go back further.
Sure.
And as I prepare for the future. So I go back
Yeah.
and get a sense of what's happening.
Right.
I'm concerned. I think some of the decisions were made maybe in that period of time, but like there was a lot of big discussion about the airport and what was going to be built by it, and then they put the moratorium on. I felt as if the moratorium might have come ahead of the final decision on some building there. But,
Okay.
But I don't have enough input yet to make a definite, this was a mistake or this should have been done this
Do you
way.
feel like that's a strength or a weakness? To have a bit of knowledge, but not full scale. I noticed that last night at the forum, where, Shannon obviously was on council, Shelby's mayor,
Yep.
and you're like,
Yep.
I don't have necessarily this dialed
Yep,
in.
yep.
Do you feel like that?
I think it's both good and bad.
Okay.
Obviously experience means a lot in a lot of situations, and the specific experience of being on the council and that would be good. Especially you see it with Shannon. I think she is a sharp young lady and has a lot of education and so forth. Her philosophy politically is a little bit maybe left of where I would be, but she's sensible and got some understanding and so forth. If I win, she'll still be on the city council. And I told her last night in the forum, that's where I want you.
That was hilarious. I love it. So now one of the things that came up, and I want you to be able to address it a little bit, is that the Ken Lawrence for Mayor Facebook page posted some data that said, hey, the budget's doubled, more than doubled, and vote for me, and you've tried to address that a little bit. So I actually, when I put out here, I was having mayors, I got some messages like, can he address that, please? Can he address that, please? So I'd love for you to talk about what happened there, about the post, and then kind of what you've done since then.
Well, we pick up information from different helpers or people that that offer things, and in this, of course, has been partially a learning process for us, and so we realized that we needed to have our facts straight, but we didn't know how. I didn't know how difficult it could be to get your facts straight because there are a dozen different facts for each question, and from different angles of it. And
right.
And
which part of the budget are you looking
at?
Yeah.
And the budget as it's presented for the year to come, like we've already adopted 2020, and that is $5 million or something like that less than last year's budget. So that's a nice move, whatever looks like, but from the last 4 years through 2019 budget, not 20, but 19, there has been quite an increase. It's not 128% or whatever we were throwing around, 124%. It's not that much, but as near as I can tell, it is close to around 40%, 38% or something like that increase. And again, it depends on where you're starting and finishing, and you can't finish with the 2020 budget. You got to finish with 2019.
So you made a post that made a claim, and Shelby, I think, pushed back pretty hard on that, and I think that you then responded. Like, how did you respond to that? What did you do?
I wasn't aware of it personally at the beginning, and one of my team members came and said, we put that in from something that we had here, and we don't, it looks to be not that accurate, and so they pulled it that day.
Okay.
And then I saw Shelby the next day or two, and I just told him, I said, I want you to know that it will be our attempt, and it is our desire to be honest and truthful, and so we pulled that down, and we I don't think we're going to replace it, and we don't feel like we need to defend. Anytime somebody has a question about us, there have been some cute ones in the paper, but on that, I did tell Mayor Shelby that we realized that we had put something in, somebody had given us, and that may have not been accurate, and so we revised our figure from 124% increase while he was mayor down to 38 or 9 or something like that.
Okay.
And told him that.
But did you post that?
Nope.
Change?
No,
Okay.
we're not going to.
Okay.
Because it isn't necessary. We told him how we felt, and we pulled the original thing off, and that's all, more than enough
Okay.
from our point of view.
All right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Good.
So now it's finish up, and while I've resigned at the church 5 weeks ago, this weekend we are having one of the meetings like we have had so often, monthly meetings almost at times, and we have a man coming to be with us, Michael Brennan, and he's just a solid, mature man, and he's coming from Albany, New York. He's a close friend of Kevin Ford, so he's going to be with us this weekend. So tonight, Wednesday, I go down to Post Falls where he'll be speaking in a service there, and bring him back up here tonight, and he will stay here through. We take him back to the airport on Sunday night, but in the midst of the final days, and we'll be having a sign waving, hopefully again on Saturday, and we have another forum on Friday night, and all like that. But my schedule tentatively right now is to go and pick him up tonight and bring him back here.
Oh, cool. Good.
And then I have an appointment tomorrow morning with Jennifer Stapleton, and I'm just going to have a talk with her, get acquainted with things at the city hall and so forth, and some other things planned tomorrow, and then on Friday night we'll have the library forum with the B, Bonner County.
Right.
Putting that on Friday night.
That's good.
That's from 5:30 to 7:30,
Okay.
which is excellent timing for me, because if I'm done at 7:30, I can go and hear my friends speak.
All forums go long. Okay, it's just the way it is. Lots of questions. So as you look at your next steps here, obviously you've got some big things coming up. We've got a vote coming up on November 5th, coming up on Tuesday. Obviously, you want people to get out and vote for you.
Oh, yes.
Is there anything that you would say, here's the reasons why you should vote for Ken Lawrence?
Get out my little card for the first time. One of the statements that I make as a PowerPoint here is to unite the people of Sandpoint with solid, common sense American values. Now, to me, that's important, and that means something. But I heard someone who I would have thought, running for city council, lady, I think her name is Kate or something, but I would have thought of her as being kind of well to the left of myself. But when she spoke and I spoke in the forum, it didn't sound a whole lot different. In fact, I think she or one of the others running for city council almost said these same words, that they wanted to see solid, common sense American values. And in my thought, they were moving way to the left. So when I say
common
this,
sense is not common. Yeah, I mean, in the sense of everybody sees it differently now. There's not a It's interesting.
Yep. And
interesting.
But my desire is the accent on the first word, unite, and in our political climate in America right now, that seems like an impossibility. But my desire will be to work with everyone, and we have a city administrator that's highly skilled apparently, and I've very personable as I've met her and so forth, and people on the city council, some that I would be real excited about, and some not as much. I would be comfortable if Jackie Guinan and Shannon Michaels were added to the city council, because I feel like I have some rapport with them and so forth.
Okay.
But we'll know on probably Wednesday or how it turns out.
Before we leave, I wanted to address the one thing that has come up a couple times, and it's that because you're a conservative Republican, that you're affiliated with the Readout Group or with other groups that maybe don't have a great, I'm not saying anything left or right about the Readout Group, but how do you handle those associations, and what are, do you have any affiliations or associations with groups here that you, political groups that you feel that you connect with?
I have been approached by a lady reporter from the Readout thing, and she told me that she was from that, and she smiled like any other reporter and said, could I interview you? And at the Freedom Festival, which I was very pleased to be a part of for the last 3 or 4 years, she came to me there and said, can I video you for a few minutes, 2 or 3, I don't know how long, 3 or 4 minutes. I said, well, sure. And so she asked me reasonable questions, nothing edgy or whatever, and I answered them. That's my affiliation as far as it goes. Yeah. And I don't know much about the group. I know that they're feared by some people, and maybe admired by others. But
sure.
But I don't
political
have
groups
associations.
Political groups have a way of and creating all types of weird responses.
And I've also been mentioned as a possible racist, which is maybe the first time in my life that I've been mentioned in that regard, and that was just a result of putting my name on the ballot. So, that's
unfortunate.
I've pastored right here in town for 22 years. Yeah. I have I've brought in people of many different races to be speakers in our church regularly. One summer we had 3 or 4 native pastors just from Africa in one summer. It wasn't planned that way, but it opened up. They were able to be in the area, and they were here with us, and it was amazing. And we've had people of different backgrounds in the church, and it's nothing that
Well, that's one of the joys of politics, I mean, everybody's got to fit you in a box. Well, with that, I really appreciate you taking the time to have the conversation.
2 times.
2 times. But I'm very confident that this one is going off without a hitch. So just a few quick housekeeping items for our Bonner Breakdown audience. A couple of things that you'll recognize. If you look down in the comment section, you'll find Ken Lawrence's website. You'll also find his Facebook page if you want to get in contact with him. There's also timestamps on our video for different topics that we discuss and cover. So make sure that I'm telling you that at the end, because I want you to watch the whole thing if you're curious. And that we want to keep that going on all of our videos. So we know that these are lengthy, they're not short, they're not sound bites, even though I'm sure some people are going to rip some sound bites out of what we do, which is fine. You go ahead. Good. But you might get. We haven't gone into the copyright world yet, but for now you can pull sound bites out. But the reality is we want to make this as convenient for you, the watcher, the observer, and our amazing audience as we can. So, Ken, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. For
really,
having me.
really blessed to have you here, and good luck. In the next this next week, and we'll see how it goes, and might have to have another one after if you happen to be elected or not.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.